Police officers of Reddit, what are you thinking when you see cases like George Floyd? I am a police officer in a medium-sized suburban town in Texas. I have been in law enforcement for 14 years. I love my job, I love how I get to help people, and I love how I get to cause positive changes in people's lives. I love how 99.9% of the time, my badge is shiny. Today my badge is not shiny. I am tired of hearing the excuses given by other people for a police officer's misconduct. I am tired of excuses being made for people who tarnish my badge. I am so tired of hearing how officers have a stressful job and their misconduct was a result of that stress. You know who else is under stress? The people who called us, that person whose loved one just committed suicide, the family who called us because they found grandma dead and now we're asking everyone questions, the 7 to 11 clerk who just had a gun shoved in his face, and even the guy we just put in handcuff FFS, and told him he is losing his freedom. Sorry, but our stress is low compared to these folks. We might have to go into these situations, but we get to leave them and pretend none of that crap ever happened after our shift is over. I am tired of hearing excuses for the bad police officers. I am tired of the excuse, well, he puts his life in danger. Sure, I know we put our lives in danger. I've had guns, knives, and even swords pulled on me. I've responded to bomb threats, suicidal subjects, assaults in progress, robberies in progress, etc. You know who else puts their lives in danger? Firefighters, deep-sea fishermen, loggers, people who step foot outside their homes in Chicago. We are trained to deal with danger, we are provided with equipment and training to help us survive those dangers. Do I face an increased risk of not going home? Sure, but that's why I am at an increased level of awareness at work, so I can respond to threats appropriately without panic and over-responding. I am tired of hearing about the thin blue line. I believe in the thin blue line. I believe in looking out for my fellow officers. I don't believe in hiding the misconduct or unlawfulness of other officers, and I have always spoken up. What many forget, standing behind the thin blue line doesn't mean concealing the misconduct of other officers, and it means confronting those officers so they don't do something to ruin their lives, the lives of others, or violate the law or code of conduct. It means walking up to the officer with his knee on a suspect's neck and saying, "Dude, this is too much, stop," before the officer commits murder. It means walking up to the officer who has been drinking all night and saying, "Dude, I'll give you a ride home." Instead of hiding misconduct, prevent it. Help your fellow officer not do something to ruin his life or another's life. If you do see misconduct, address it, take it to the appropriate level, and stop tarnishing my badge. We took an oath to uphold the law, uphold our ethics, and protect our communities, sometimes which means arresting other police officers or holding them accountable for policy/ethics violations. This officer violated the rights of George Floyd and murdered him through his actions. The officers who were on scene and failed to act are just as responsible. There are multiple videos of this incident and there is no real question as to what happened. For those folks who wonder what makes it murder or manslaughter, murder is the act of causing death to another human being through an action which a reasonable person would know, or intend, could result in the death of the victim. Manslaughter is the act of causing death through an act which is reckless in nature. Every officer in America is taught about positional asphyxiation, and while some departments allow neck restraints, all officers are taught the dangers of neck restraints and are taught not to apply pressure to the back of someone's neck or head when they are prone out on the ground in handcuffs. Floyd was handcuffed with little resistance and they were able to walk him across the street to a patrol unit. Floyd can be seen in a surveillance video falling to the ground next to the unit on the sidewalk side of the unit. Cell phone footage then shows the officer on top of Floyd's neck on the opposite side of the unit, the street side. There is a random man in the background telling Floyd just to get in the car and he can't win. Floyd can be heard saying he knows and he's done. This implies that Floyd may have resisted or attempted to escape, but was still restrained in the handcuffs. Floyd can be heard multiple times saying he can't breathe. The cell phone video shows the officer kneeling on top of Floyd's neck for at least 8 minutes, with around 4 of those minutes with Floyd being unconscious. Even if Floyd did attempt to resist or escape, there was no reason to hold him down for 8 minutes. What was the point of restraining him for so long? Why did the other officer not assist the primary officer with restraining Floyd so they could get him in the patrol unit quicker? Why did the primary officer continue to restrain Floyd by his neck after Floyd became unresponsive? Why can the officer be heard at some point asking Floyd if he is still a tough guy? I can only come up with one answer to all of these questions, and that was the primary officer, Chauvin, wanted to prove to Floyd that Floyd was not such a tough guy. I see an officer assaulting another human being, going beyond taking control of a suspect, using force as punishment and ultimately causing the death of another human being. I see a second officer who stood and watched and did nothing, despite knowing that what the first officer was doing was a violation of law and policy. I see officers who were trying to get back at Floyd for running his mouth and resisting an arrest by using force they knew could result in death or serious bodily injury in a situation which did not justify using deadly force. This officer committed murder, plain and simple. This officer tarnished my badge and the badges of all police officers. Worst of all, this officer tortured his victim for 8 minutes. Imagine your last thoughts and memories being those of a police officer, a person who the public is supposed to be able to trust, placing his body weight on your neck, slowly asphyxiating you against hot asphalt while he asks you if you're still a tough guy. I hope this officer, and any officer who allowed this to happen, is tried and convicted. It's going to be some time before I can polish my badge back to a shine. In the meantime, a family is suffering, and a community is burning, all because of one guy who should have never been an officer. What do I think? I think buttholes like this make my job that much harder and damage the trust I work so hard for. I think buttholes like this ruin people's lives and ruin families. I think buttholes like these should be stuck in a prison with all of the people they ever arrested. Much respect. Your empathy gives me hope. Very well written. Thank you for your service and for taking the time to write this. For all the police officers here, what would the charges be if one of the bystanders pulled the police officer off of the poor guy? Wow, thanks for gold. Assault on a police officer, obstruction of justice, and probably resisting arrest, depending on state laws of course, that gets tossed in as an easy one to charge, but usually gets pled off in court. I fear that if someone had intervened, that version of the story never would have received publicity. Death is a much weightier headline. It's hard to intervene when there's no visible precedent of it being effective, and there is a strong precedent of reactive brutality. I wish we had positive stories available on the news in which de-escalation worked, but in a similar way to flattening the curve, it's so much harder to count saved lives than lost ones. Also, what would happen to a cop if they intervened or pushed the cop off of him? They would never work as a cop again. That is a really sad commentary on our police. I'm a former police officer, and so have had plenty of training in physical restraint of individuals being arrested. There is no police academy training officers to kneel on someone's neck to subdue them. That's how you kill a person. There is extensive training on how to avoid seriously injuring a person while restraining them, and I guarantee you every one of these officers was trained to never strike a person in the neck or choke them. The officer who killed him is very clearly liable for manslaughter at the very least, and I think the other officers who stood by have some accountability as well because they knew damn well that was not how you handle a person, and should have stepped up. Lawyer here. While the literal text of most justification/necessity defenses would apply to using force in that situation, most likely the Good Samaritan would be charged with obstruction or interference with public duties. They would then have to convince a jury that there was no other reasonable recourse short of physical force. That's a tall order, and I'd be real nervous for my client. In a worst-case scenario, our hypothetical Samaritan gets tased or shot or killed for their troubles. My thoughts? Record and verbally demand the officer stop is probably the wisest course. But that is exactly what happened, and clearly the end result is that the cop didn't stop and someone died. The wisest course, because unfortunately a more interfering action may get you seriously hurt or killed. Yeah, those situations don't often have win-win endings, unfortunately. Exactly. I saw some comments ripping up the bystanders saying they're cowards and just as guilty for just watching. I swear some people don't understand that sometimes every option is a loss. Yeah, attacking an armed murderer whose armed friends are close by. What could go wrong with that? Exactly. It'd be a damn shame if the recorder got shot by accident, and they had to confiscate the phone as evidence. Who knows, maybe the phone gets destroyed and the recording is permanently lost. There is no police academy training officers to kneel on someone's neck to subdue them. That's how you kill a person. This is why it's quite apparent the officer had intent to end the guy's life. Any sane person, officer or not, would not have wanted to kill someone over what that guy did in the last 10 minutes of interaction. The officer had the eyes of someone who wouldn't think twice about the value of the man he's causing to lose consciousness. Not a local, I'm a Fed. 5 years into the job. George Floyd was murdered and it's effing disgusting. We're trained that anything involving the neck is a no-go and is considered deadly force. We were also trained that if you make an arrest in a prone position, you search and then immediately move them onto their side or a seated position because the risk of asphyxiation is so great. If a suspect says they can't breathe, believe them and take measures to correct to it. This training is reinforced at least twice a year in our use of force training. These officers deserve to spend the rest of their lives in prison. It's reassuring to hear this. Any suggestions on how employment screening could be improved to avoid letting people like this join the ranks and tarnish the reputation of all the good cops? I'm not a cop, but I think we need a new organization specifically for investigating police corruption and crime. This organization should have an anonymous phone number good policemen can call to report crime, corruption, racists, etc., within a local or state police force and have them investigated. I'm a police officer in California. I am absolutely disgusted by the officer's actions. When someone is in our custody, you must treat them properly. I don't care if they are arrested for murder or forgery. They are a human with a story and they deserve to be treated with dignity and respect. I had tears streaming down my face watching the video of George Floyd. We swore to protect our communities and that's what we set out to do every day. Putting a knee into the neck of a handcuffed man for an extended period of time isn't protecting. A man has lost his life due to the gross negligence of an evil person. May he rest in peace. Makes it harder to protect communities when you lose the trust of the public. These situations hurt you all, unfortunately. Cop here. Disgusted. There are 1,000 reasons why this shouldn't have happened. Simple, easy, steps that should have been taken. Lessons that policing has learned over the past 200 years and basic things taught in every academy. Make no mistake, this was murder. Maybe not premeditated murder, but nonetheless murder. I will be angry if those officers do not get indicted. He's apparently been involved in at least 2 other deaths, including shooting a fleeing suspect in the back. I don't know, given that history, premeditation seems reasonable. That is inexcusable. I used to be a police officer. It was effing embarrassing going out the day after something like this happened. One of the reasons I quit was because I had no pride in my job anymore. For the people doubting if I used to be a cop or not, this is the only proof I really have. In order to get the police officer flare on /r/protect and serve, you need to send the mods a pic of your police issued ID. Haven't been to that sub since before I quit, but here it is. Web link. Reddit link. It was effing embarrassing going out the day after something like this happened. I find it odd the police union itself never seems to feel the same sense of embarrassment about severe misconduct. That's the thing about good cops. They theoretically exist, but they very rapidly become former cops. I have a good friend that is a cop. We had a long discussion about good cops versus bad cops. I made the point that the bad cops seem to be able to get away with bad behavior all the time. They are never treated like everyone else and police departments seem to bend over backwards to protect them. He said to the effect, well, it's a hard job and we all need to know the other guy has our back. If we turn on each other like that, then it destroys the trust. My response was basically, if that's the truth, then there is no such thing as good cops. If good cops protect the bad ones instead of going after them harder than they do other people, then they are worse than the crooked cops. If you're a cop, then just do your effing job. It doesn't matter if the guy is wearing a badge or not. If he's a piece of crap criminal, then arrest that piece of crap and put his ass away. I was a Marine musician. Yeah, the Marine Corps has banned nerds. At one point I got punished for failure to follow orders. I wasn't practicing the required amount. Confined to quarters and work for 2 weeks, forfeited 2 weeks' pay. I was held to higher standards and punished more harshly for effing up a Sousa march than many cops face for killing someone. We got to look out for each other as for surviving combat, not avoiding accountability. That's actually what I took away from the ops friend's argument. Cops think they are at war and will resort to war zone measures to protect their fellow officers. Stupid. Amen. It shouldn't matter who's breaking the law. It should, but the standard should be higher for police officers. As enforcers of the law, they can expect it to be aware of it to a better degree, and as guardians of the public trust the crimes they commit disintegrate that trust. A police officer who commits a crime should be subject to, at a minimum, loss of pension and benefits for any crime above a misdemeanor, and the maximum allowable penalty for the crime committed. They should also be eligible to be subjected to double the maximum penalty for both jail time and fines, and the same fine should be levied against the department if there is found to be any cover-up, inaction on the part of the department, or other mishandling of the case. Cops should be punished more for their transgressions because their transgressions do more harm to their departments and the communities they serve. Saw a thing the other day that said if there are 1,000 good cops and 10 bad cops but the good cops keep quiet about the bad cops, there are really 1,010 bad cops. A lot of truth to that. Thank you for watching. If you like our videos, please like them on YouTube. And share them with your friends. Please subscribe to be the first to know about Red Rabbit Reader's new videos. We welcome your comments below. Another of our videos will begin shortly.